Welcome to Pat's Cast. I am Brad Whitaker. As we head into this new era in New England, Jerod Mayo is showing a little chutzpah, if you will, a little bit of cockiness as we head toward NFL free agency in what will be a pivotal 3 months for the future of this organization and what could make the difference between a 1 to 2 year rebuild and a 4 to 5 year rebuild, or perhaps even longer, particularly if they don't get the quarterback position right. But in order to get the quarterback position right, you need to put the right pieces around him to thrive in the NFL. As we saw with Mac Jones, you can't just throw him out there to the Wolves and expect it to work out. You will break the young guy, and that's what it's looking like the Patriots are going to be prioritizing heading into free agency. And if you didn't remember, Jerod Mayo, shortly after he was named Patriots head coach, he appeared on WEEI and he told the crew there, the Patriots are ready to burn some cash. And the way he said it kind of was like, oh, okay, that's a little bit of a different attitude than we are used to seeing here in New England with Bill Belichick. Yeah, well, we're gonna take the best player available. We're gonna yeah, and then constantly bargain shopping and trying to figure out what can I get for the biggest bang for my buck. Yes, we need a left tackle, but you know what? There's a really good right guard that I really like that's 36 years old and maybe slightly undervalued. So I'm going to spend money on that instead. I don't think that's what's going to happen now with the new Jerod Mayo regime. Now, it should be noted, Jerod Mayo is not going to be the one who is actually doing the cash burning. That is going to be Elliott Wolf, who is essentially the de facto GM. Not Matt Crow, thankfully, and certainly not Bill Belichick anymore. It's going to be Elliott Wolf. And yes, he's been with the organization. He's worked as the director of scouting. So a lot of people are not very excited about that. They think it's going to be meet the new boss, same as the old boss. But I don't think it's going to be that way. You ask anyone that's worked with Elliott Wolf in places like Green Bay and places like Cleveland, he can be aggressive, and he's going to certainly be aggressive with this new Alex Van Pelt run offense, this new West Coast style offense, which is going to be somewhere between sort of the old school West Coast, Bill Walsh, Mike McCarthy style offense, and the Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, new school, wide zone, bootleg heavy offense. They're going to meet somewhere in the middle there if I had to predict right now. But in order for that to work out, they're going to need to spend money like crazy on actual good players. And the Patriots took steps on Monday to actually clear up the amount of cap space for them to be able to burn cash, as Jerod Mayo said, cutting Adrian Phillips and Lawrence Guy and clearing up a decent amount of cap space. Now, I mentioned this on the podcast yesterday that, look, I like Lawrence Guy, I like Adrian Phillips. I'm not sure you want to cut those guys, but if you do it, you're going to put yourself in a position to really be able to spend some money. And literally within a few hours after I said that, that is exactly what the Patriots did. And that won't be the only cut. There will be additional cuts for sure. Certainly J.C. Jackson will be cut. It doesn't mean they won't bring him back with a restructured contract, but he is not worth the 8-figure salary he is being paid, and he knows that. He knows that deal the LA Chargers gave him, no other team in the NFL is going to provide, and certainly he's not going to be able to contribute elsewhere in the same way he contributes in New England. We've seen both instances, and he's not going to get paid a lot of money. So certainly the Patriots are going to get rid of that contract, which is going to bring their salary cap number just shy of $90 million. So when all is said and done, the Patriots, make a few moves additionally, they could be working with almost 9 figures in free agency, which is going to put them at the top or near the top of the rest of the NFL. And look, I encourage you to watch yesterday's podcast. I broke down what I think would be a good plan, but now they have even more money than I was expecting to work with. So look, you got to prioritize certain things. You got to bring back Michael Onwenu, right? He's a guy that you're either going to have playing at right tackle or right guard. Kicked him over there to right tackle halfway through the season, a little bit too late, and did a hell of a job. He may be worthy of the franchise tag option. Now, that's going to be expensive. We're talking about $20 million plus to franchise tag him. There's also Kyle Duggar. I know there's rumors about franchise tagging him as well, but he's 28 years old. He's quite literally in the prime of his career, maybe ascending or descending the hill a little bit. So this may be his best season, but you're signing him to a long-term deal. We may have seen the best of Kyle Duggar, but he's certainly potentially worthy of a franchise tag. I also floated out Hunter Henry. I think Henry and tight ends are relatively cheap to franchise tag. Now, he's going to be making a lot more money than he would be currently, but I think as kind of a bridge tight end, it's worth that, and then working to actually extend more long-term Michael Onwenu and Kyle Duggar. And then there's, of course, Kendrick Bourne. I think Kendrick Bourne will be back. He's expressed that he wants to come back to the Patriots. He really likes working in that locker room. Thought highly of Belichick and thinks just as highly of Jerod Mayo. I would expect Kendrick Bourne, who's one of the few receivers that was actually working in that room, to be returning. But that's going to chew up a little bit of salary cap space, right? However, in free agency, you're going to still have a lot to work with, okay? One guy I really want to see them go after is Mike Evans. Now, this is going to be, you're going to have to overspend to bring in Mike Evans, because in order for him to go from Tampa to New England, a team that had tied for the second worst record in the NFL last season, you're going to have to pay up. And maybe not necessarily annually, but you're going to have to pay up in terms of providing him sort of a longer term deal, because he is past the age of 30 now, and he wants that insurance that, hey, I'm still going to be a highly paid NFL receiver for the next few years. So when I'm pushing 35, I'm still making a decent amount of money when I'm much closer to retirement or at retirement, certainly than I am now. So look, you're going to have to divvy up for a guy like Mike Evans, but I certainly think it's worth it. At least these first few seasons, you're going to get 1,000 yards on the ground, or 1,000 yards receiving from him. And you're going to get, 60 to 70, 80 catches that are big plays with a guy like Mike Evans. I say you get Brady on the phone, have Brady get Evans on the phone and say, hey, they want you in New England. You should go there. Here's why. And they're willing to pay up to get you there. But hey, now you have even more money to work with. Why not go after two of these guys? All right, I know it sounds crazy, but a guy who I think is going to be a little bit cheaper of all the free agent wide receivers on the market is Calvin Ridley. He seems like an obvious fit for the New England Patriots. If you could snag both Mike Evans and Calvin Ridley, that would be considered a highly successful offseason. Certainly Calvin Ridley would be a little cheaper than a Michael Pittman Jr. or a T. Higgins or a Mike Evans, but maybe you could have a shot if you're willing to overspend, if you're willing to provide sort of longer term deals for these guys to entice them to come to New England and say, hey, look, we got some new blood here in the coaching staff. People love Alex Van Pelt. People love Jerod Mayo. I think you're really going to like what's happening here in New England. And we're going to take a quarterback early in the first round in all likelihood. I think you're going to like who we take. Why not? If you can get two of those four guys somehow, then suddenly you go from last place in the AFC East to at least being able to somewhat contend with teams like the Bills and the Dolphins and give that next quarterback the receiving core they deserve to actually thrive as a rookie. Now, you're still going to have to address the offensive line. Bringing back Michael Onwenu is not going to be enough. The guy I floated out yesterday, Tyron Smith, veteran, little up there in age, left tackle with the Dallas Cowboys, though, one of the better tackles in the NFL. You're only going to be able to sign him to a 1 to 2 year deal. I'm not sure he's going to want to leave Dallas, but if you have the chance to get a guy like that, you may be able to get him for 10 to 14 million, perhaps. Now, understanding that that's probably not likely, a more realistic target is a guy like Jonah Williams from the Cincinnati Bengals. Decent pass blocker, not as great of a run blocker, but certainly more than competent at that position. The nice thing about Jonah Williams is he can play both left tackle and right tackle. So let's say you bring back Onwenu and you sign Jonah Williams and draft another tackle in the draft. You could kick the new rookie tackle over to right tackle, have Jonah Williams there as a bridge on the left side, and kick Michael Onwenu back to right guard. And suddenly you have some really good protection for the next quarterback, ideally paired with some of those offensive weapons I just mentioned. Now, if Jonah Williams is not an option, there's always Trent Brown. Don't love the idea, but Trent Brown, sorry, my dogs are going crazy, but Trent Brown is going to cost you a little bit, but not as much as he's currently cost, because similar to a guy like J.C. Jackson. He's certainly better than J.C. Jackson. When he is engaged, when he cares, Trent Brown is one of the better tackles in the NFL. Maybe you get a little bit of new life out of him being under Jerod Mayo. I think he is the third option if you're going to bring in a tackle through free agency. I'm not sure what he's going to get elsewhere, honestly. So maybe you can bring back Trent Brown for cheap. Some red flags there, obviously. Kind of disengaged halfway through the season, was put on the bench. But worst case scenario, that is not a terrible option. So I like all three of those guys. I would prioritize Tyron Smith, then Jonah Williams, and then Trent Brown if need be. And then you can really kind of address the tackle position, maybe take a Patrick Paul or a Tyler Guyton in the second round, and now suddenly you have a reinforced offensive line. He's still Cole Strange, who's really good when healthy. Ideally, you still have David Andrews. You got the other Andrews guy at center if he does retire, but I think David Andrews will be back. And Sidney So showed a lot of life at the end of the season, so maybe he develops a little bit more as a right guard. So you bring in some of those guys, you at least have some depth across that O-line. So a lot you can do there, but the Patriots, they are ready to spend, and I'm very excited about it, and I think Gerard Mayo, going into this offseason a little bit cocky, with Elliott Wolf, with something to prove there, there's a lot of money they have to work with, and I think they can make a big splash with a guy like Mike Evans and Calvin Ridley and a premier left tackle, and certainly prioritize bringing guys back like Hunter Henry, Kendrick Bourne, Kyle Duggar, and certainly Michael Onwenu, who tops that list as a guy that you got to bring back. You got to bring back Michael Onwenu. But now that we're heading into free agency, and the Patriots are likely to have $90 million in cap space, perhaps even more if they make a few more cuts, what would you like to see them do? Let me know in the comments below, and we'll be back with some more Patscast tomorrow.